also not hearing you. So.
Hello? Hello? Okay. We are rolling. All right. The time has arrived for me to call this meeting of Economic Development Committee to order for Tuesday, May 4, Cinco de Mayo Eve. Record will show we have 4 committee members in attendance. Alder Rasmussen has a scheduling conflict this evening, which would delay her and possibly prevent her from joining us tonight. Because of that, in hopes that she will be able to show up at some point, I'm going to shuffle the agenda around a little bit to try and get some of our action items pushed back a little. So, first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from our meeting of 3:30 of this year. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion from Killian and a second from McElhaney. Any changes, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Number 2, approval of minutes from our 4/22 meeting of this year. Is there a motion to approve? I have a motion from Watson. Do I have a second? McElhaney? Any changes? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to skip to item number 4 on our agenda, discussion and possible action on adopting a charter for an affordable housing task force for the city of Wausau. This item originally kind of came up in one of our earlier meetings this year, and we talked about creating a task force, and the mayor also showed interest in that. So I believe the mayor is here tonight to kind of give us where she's at on that.
Sure. So you can see in your packet that there's kind of an outline of like what this task force. I'm just trying to pull it up. Also, I'd like to point out I apologize to the city attorney for calling it a charter. I can't stop calling these things a charter. So it's an organizing document for a task force. So you can see the mission and purpose. We talked about this. I actually went back in my notes. We've been talking about this since January. So we went back and forth with United Way, with NCAP, with our homelessness group, with a couple groups who, like, in theory, lead these kind of research projects, but they really haven't. They've been focused mostly on like the immediate needs of the homeless. And we also talked a little bit about like, well, what does the city need? And I thought we needed to run this in the way that we do, which minutes and official posting and all kinds of stuff like that. And so that doesn't always come with some of the other nonprofits. So this is kind of where we're at. You can see that the mission and purpose is kind of a community-led, but also regional look, because one of the things we also found out is that it's not, well, it seems obvious when you say it, but it's not just a Wausau issue. It's everywhere issue, and even on some calls I've had with Weston and some other places, they're asking like, how do we work together on some of these initiatives? So that's why it's regional. You can see the kind of duties and responsibilities I outlined. This is mostly what came to mind for me, but if there's more, we can talk about what to add. If there's something we need to take away, I think that it's important that the alder who serves on this probably has a connection to this committee, but that's not necessarily what's needed. So I don't know. I assume you all got a chance to take a look at it, so if you have questions, let me know.
Okay, choosing the membership of the group, the task force. What is that included in the outline of the mechanics of that?
I guess we could put that in the document. I assumed that much like the other kind of committees that we have, you know, I would just appoint the people who have applied, based on, you know, their interest and their background and whatever. We have that citizen participation form, people can fill that out. You know, some of it, I thought it would be important that we include some people that we have, you know, Community Development Authority, that could either be people who work there or who are on that board. We have great wealth of information there. North Central Community Action Program, they're already kind of living in that space, so it was important there. But, you know, I think it's important to have somebody who uses it, if at all possible, if we can have somebody who experiences that. I know it's tough sometimes if you're.
So then this group would, let's say, propose things directly to council?
I mean, what we're doing with the policing task force is, you know, we're gonna come up with a series of recommendations and propose those, as recommendations to council to kind of chew over, probably public health and safety, police and fire commission, those kinds of things. I'm thinking the same thing here. I mean, if the recommendations are for economic development, then they should come here. If they're for something else, like code changes, then they go to that committee. You know, I think that's the way it looks.
Okay, and budgeting go to finance, et
Right,
cetera.
yeah, but maybe seeing it all together as, you know, a package is helpful too.
You see this as a monthly meeting, or
Probably.
kind of group it up a little bit more at the front end to get some momentum and then get into a monthly rotation?
Yeah, so, well, what we're doing now with policing is, you know, we've been meeting monthly, kind of learning, kind of getting through those questions. And now we're meeting a little bit more frequently as we get to the research portion and wanting to get to the recommendations by the end of the year. So we're meeting a little bit more frequently. So I'm kind of guessing, you know, it really depends on how the group works, but yeah.
You know, there's been a lot of information, you know, floating around and, you know, being sent to us and gathered by various people in the administration and various citizens and whatnot. It seems that, you know, putting these together into sort of a booklet form, you know, the numbers, you know, that related to the need, demographics, monies, history of activities and potential, all these kinds of things, you know, kind of like a little Bible for that group, would really be handy. Matter of fact, for everybody on council as well. But that initial document, if you will, I think would be really handy to just get everybody, you know, on an equal, you know, footing, you know, from the get-go. So,
Yeah.
any idea how quickly that can be put together?
It depends on if you want it thorough and good or slapdash. So I'm assuming thorough and good.
Yeah.
I would anticipate this taking, I mean, several, you know, when I look at this, I think in order to do a good job, it should, you know, you should be working on this for a year. But, you know, maybe we get it done in 8 months or 7 months. I don't know. And some of those recommendations, if they're good, they're good. Like, we should be talking about them right away. We shouldn't be waiting.
Is there like a front person in the administration that would be kind of like the czar of this, or is this directly to your office?
I mean, we can decide. It's probably, I don't want to give somebody a task publicly right now, but I think there's probably somebody working for City Hall that would be a really great front person.
Yeah, I think that'd be, because I think everybody knows like how crazy busy you are. You know.
Everyone is crazy busy.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Yeah, okay.
If this is a priority, we get it done.
All right, questions from the committee for the mayor? Alder Killian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had talked a little bit tonight about time frame and so forth. Would there be any way, I know that there's going to be some studying involved and some measured evaluation of what's needed and so forth. But once we pull the trigger on this or slightly before, could we try to attach an action time frame to a plan so that, you know, and it's not necessarily written in stone or blood. If something comes up that would suggest more time is needed, it does. But prior to pulling the trigger, could we try to have a time frame of, in X amount of months, we're going to try to do X, Y, or Z to meet some of the need?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
part of the process at the front end is to identify achievable goals, and barriers, that sort of thing, to really see what resources this committee or board or task force or whatever can bring to bear, and to kind of establish what are its capabilities, so that we're not seemingly just sounding like advocates, but actually are in a more minded position. So rather than just talking about how much the need is or whatever, really identifying steps, salient things that we can do. So it's kind of like to what Alder Killian is saying. It's just we need to maybe not so much a time frame right off the bat, but a list of beyond what we have right now, a list of concrete goals, avenues that we can explore, that sort of thing. So, because it could be that there's a particular, let's say, a federal funding opportunity that we can use a certain way. Well, that would be one thing that this, group can look into. That there's still all these other things out there that we have to be looking at the same time, but that might be, that's why they call it a task force. You have tasks. So, but yeah, if we just kind of identify those things, it's going to take a little while, I think, because at first it really is the intelligence gathering, prioritizing, and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and I would say there's a lot of stuff to look at. Wausau has done a lot in the way of like tax credit projects, and as it turns out, like their 15-year, that they have to remain affordable. Some of those are big and they're coming up now. So then people are finding themselves squeezed out. So what does that look like, and how can we make sure that not everybody is squeezed out at the same time in our community? So.
Okay, I mean, there's things like, there's a lot of discussion about, let's say, new higher-end construction that's happening, and it's like, well, what about, the more affordable housing needs? We need to look into things like, is the creation of X number of higher-end, apartments or condos or whatnot, also then providing sort of vacated properties within the city where people are leaving those behind to, whether they're empty nesters or they want downtown living or whatever it is, and now their home on whatever side of town now could become housing stock, because we're low on housing stock, could become a member of the affordable housing, population, if you will,
Sure, and I would say like some of that probably comes along when we're talking about the barriers to people finding housing.
Right.
Like maybe having a mortgage is cheaper, but they can't even get to that point. Like how
Sure.
do we help people get there? What is it that our community needs? So.
Yeah. And, since there is such strong public interest in this issue, and with that, some misinformation or anger or what have you, it'd be a great thing for this task force to be the source of, regular sort of releases of information to this, to the city, or from government, city government to the public, to just say, okay, here's an update on where we're at, or an update on situations, an update on things we're trying to accomplish, that kind of thing.
Sure.
To just get it out there.
And maybe the Alder could be responsible for giving a regular update at council. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
So whoever you are that's appointed to this, I just volunteered you for another thing.
All right, well, anything else from the committee on this? Sure, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And some of this is a follow-up to some of your points. And, I think that when I've looked at other municipalities in Wisconsin who've tackled the affordable housing situation, one of the components that seems to be present as well, like if you take Madison, for example, is also simultaneously developing anti-gentrification policies, and I think it seems like that would be an integral part of this, and I too have heard misinformation, like Reaganomics, that trickle-down economics benefits the average person. That's been kind of debunked long ago. So certainly some misinformation. One thing I worry about is the notion that it's not, I heard some commentary about, does building luxury kind of impact homes and affordable housing for the community? I wouldn't say that it always necessarily does, but I think when you bring in subsidies and so forth that happen to be finite, then I think in business, whether it's time or money, we might label that an opportunity cost. So yes, if we're spending subsidies and strategic time and effort and money on certain types of housing as a government in partnership with the private sector, then I think gentrification can cannibalize affordable housing, that subsidizing luxury can cannibalize the development of affordable housing. So I think this is very positive, but I think as District 3 would like to see anti-gentrification protections built into the duties and responsibilities. Thank you.
Sure, it's an interesting point. And I've read up on this, and I think it would be a great thing for the task force to look into because, not to be argumentative, but there's two sides to this coin. I mean, gentrification, there's been studies that show it could go one of two ways. Of course, one of the things that you try to do through so-called gentrification is elimination of blight and, the creation of a better living space. But I think that this task force needs to really look at this word and find out, is this just a bugaboo, or is there something quantitatively that we can look at that is evidentiary of its inherent evil? And I really don't think it is myself. I've seen too much of city projects that reclaim, if you will, blighted neighborhoods or blighted properties, and it did not displace people to any to the degree that maybe you're referring to and whatnot. It's just urban living has these aspects to it, and it always has. So I mean, it is something that is a subject I think that needs to be tackled by this task force to really get the numbers out there and get an understanding of what urban renewal means in terms of affordable housing or displacement and that sort of thing, and justice for segments of the population. So it's a really interesting subject. I don't think that we should go into it in a anti-gentrification mode, but rather let's learn about the processes and the possible ups and downs of urban renewal, because it's a very dynamic subject. So, Alder Pat.
Yes, Pat Peckham, 1618 Emerson. I'm just looking at the document, and I'm wondering if it might be wise to put on hold or delay approval of the actual how this committee is going to look until the city has had time to reach out to Schofield, Weston, Rothschild, Red Mountain, Village of Maine, and see if they want to have actual participation in it. I don't know how the mayor envisioned that, but if we want them to participate and be partners, and we've already got all the seats filled, I'm not sure how that's going to work. So.
I guess that's why I left their citizen members or a member of another unit of government. I think that we can keep pushing forward and get people involved at the same time.
So would there be an actual outreach to our neighboring
Yeah,
communities?
I mean, I talk to them pretty frequently.
Okay. That would, one of them could be from Croninwetter, one of them could be the Village of Maine, and we would be okay with that.
Yes, and I was thinking more about the unit of government that was actually kind of concerned about this topic, so I'll probably follow up with everyone, but I'm likely looking at someone maybe from Weston, just based on the conversations I've already had.
Very good, thanks.
You know, I'm all for collaboration, but perhaps, you know, keeping this as a Wausau-based task force that, you know, communicates with surrounding communities and pursues potential collaboration opportunities might be better than having a really large task force of people from all over the place. You know, I mean, we are kind of here as part of, you know, Wausau's government, you know. It's going to be a quasi-governmental task force. And I don't know, it seems to me that, you know, it can be operated within our Wausau-based purview and still be collaborative, you know, when the opportunities arise. Otherwise, it could be kind of a free-for-all. So, just my thoughts. Mayor?
I won't let it be a free-for-all, but I do think there is merit in having the discussion regionally, especially since a lot of the data we'll be pulling, you know, United Way, NCAP, all of that.
Sure.
Like they don't look at Wausau only necessarily, although we likely are the biggest player here.
Right.
But imagine working together on a project where we can attract federal or state funding to a regional project. I think that'd be amazing. So I don't know what that looks like yet, but we'll figure it out.
Okay. I mean, we might find that in certain of our surrounding communities, there is very little affordable housing, period, as opposed to, you know, what we might have here in Wausau. So it's something to look into. Alder Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm Street. I guess I had a little bit of concern that Tom and I are both on the Community Development Housing Authority. And I was hoping that Betty Noel was going to be here so she could talk about whether we already have the means to explore that information, and members of the community that are interested in affordable housing, as well as a resident that lives at Riverview Towers. It just seems, from my information, Tammy Strouts is a HUD certified housing counselor, so she would be a great candidate, and I would expect whatever staff would have those credentials and having been trained in that area, in that certification. I happen to have had it from back in 2000 to 2005 with Catholic Charities, working with hundreds of families that were homeless, low income, middle income, going through divorce or other changes or unemployment, people with disabilities, as well as with seniors. I had talked to the Housing Coalition Director, Pam Anderson, who has since retired from as a U.S. banker, but she had put in quite a bit of time in Milwaukee, and she's been very an advocate for affordable housing for a long time. She does have information about how to be looking at potentially some other projects that could be potentially for tax credits within, I believe, the Milwaukee and Chicago models. But she had told me this afternoon that she had talked to Chris Schock and asked, you know, does the city have a list of vacant commercial properties? And I guess Chris said, no, there is no list. And I don't know if that is true or not, but it just seems when economic development is out there trying to woo other people into the communities, having that list would be appropriate, and that some of them could be potentially converted into affordable housing. I guess from my experience and with a bad knee and in, having been friends and advocate and a guardian for seniors, and I guess in being out in the community, I notice people that are limping like me or have other issues. And I do think for a number of these properties that are commercial that may be one floor, they may be ideal as apartments for people with disabilities that can't get around very well and would prefer not to live in housing that requires an elevator. And then a friend of mine in Weston, the elevator's been not working for over a month. So I do think you need people with disabilities, as well as seniors. I guess I question whether this task force under economic development is appropriate when we don't know, but I would think the majority of what you want to do is available under the Housing Authority. And for community development, for North Central Community Action Program, they have members in the community from other not-for-profits interested in affordable housing, and I think their board is about 50% of clients that are in low income, so that they're getting that direct impact. So I do feel like we're very minimal of impacting people that could give us the best information. And because Betty's not here, we don't know if the Housing Authority could handle 90% or more. And I guess I don't see the advantage of a task force when we do have a Housing Authority, and maybe we can just put that under that umbrella and get going and get some results sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify something. This subject of the task force came up in an ED meeting, but in no way are we talking about this task force being under the Economic Development Committee. It's going to be apart from us and not reporting to us in any way, shape, or form, other than as, through the mayor's office, through whatever vehicles she sees fit. So it's really its own animal. I think it's very potentially useful because it becomes a communication tool for the city that certainly draws on the Housing Authority as a resource and collaborator, whatever. But this is really an effort on the part of the council and administration to create something of our own that we can use as a communication tool, as a intelligence gathering tool, as a collaborative tool, and that's just it. It's not, I don't want to turn to the community development board and say, hey, we want you to take on this thing all by yourselves and be a good marketing communicator and to do more than you're already doing. So I'm sure that we would draw from them on a regular basis. So. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lou Larson, 904 South 21st Place. I'm also the alderman for District 10. I have some questions too, because I don't see the significance of a task force long term. I think if a task force, if we give it like 60 or 90 days to give us some good ideas, Alder Ryan brought up some good points. And we also have an economic and development department that, we can give out millions of dollars, for high-end housing, but we need a task force to figure out our low-income housing. And where I feel that, while we have other sources around, as Alder Ryan said, we have other sources in the neighborhood we can tap for information and such. I just feel that our economic and development department should be looking at this, even if we do or don't have a task force. It should be another day at the office. We have industries and private businesses that are screaming for people to work for them, and we need to do our part now to attract people to Wausau, to fill these jobs. And I would like to see that happen sooner than later. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the committee? Anything else? Oh, Bruce, you had your hand up, right? Alder Watson, go ahead.
I really like this idea because it puts a spotlight on an issue that we have, right? Plus, it also gets to the core. Like, we know affordable housing is an issue, but what are the symptoms, or is it a symptom of a bigger issue that we would need to address? And we don't know until we start to look at the data, right? We need to collect information to be able to fashion together solutions. we can look at other communities, we can do all that. But I mean, this task force would be tasked with that goal in mind. And I think then get the information so we can make informed decisions. So I'm really excited about this.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I just?
Sure.
I guess I don't want to like take too much time up, but affordable housing isn't necessarily a moneymaker, so I think that's why it deserves its like a little bit extra here. When I was, I'm kind of comparing it when I was on the county board, because we had a decision to make about the nursing home. Nursing homes are not moneymakers, especially if you accept Medicaid. So how do you make that work as a service that you provide? And so that's what I'm viewing this as. It's how do we get to that spot where we are providing our community what they need? You know, the other things, you know, there's a ton of stuff we can look at. You know, there's that missing middle that we keep hearing about. There's a lot of stuff we can look at. I don't think 60 or 90 days is enough time to gather the kind of information we need. I would say that would be maybe, I mean, you could come up with a resolution or policy as you want in that amount of time, but I don't think a comprehensive plan would come in that short of amount of time. I feel like I'm offering this as a solution to a request that was asked specifically by this committee, but it will be a ton of work, and if the body doesn't feel like it's going to be useful for them, then I guess, I mean, that's definitely on all of you who vote.
Well, I think depending on how this, or who this task force is populated by, is going to be very telling in terms of its potential for making things happen, you know. So, I mean, it's to me, and I've said this before, you can never have too many people, you know, trying to do good things. You know, it's just getting them involved, getting them informed, and you know, working on something as a force. Mr. Grau.
Thank you. Bruce Grau, 1115 North 10th Street. Just a couple things I'm not sure you're aware of. I sent some links to you all about some recent developments. There's an assembly bill now in our state. Believe it or not, it's bipartisan, and they're looking at the need to fund more affordable housing due to the dearth of houses available for a workforce to come and work and fill the jobs, similar to what you're speaking to. It's bipartisan. Gentrification, I know gentrification can be beneficial if it's done in a very sensitive manner and by people who have a proven history of supporting the needs of low-income people. And I want to try to put this in perspective from my observations of what I've seen in Wausau. By my calculations in the history of Wausau, we've allocated $13 million to high-end downtown and Thomas Street development. And I just ask, how does that compare to the amount that's been allocated for affordable housing? Has it been the same amount? Has it been half the amount, a quarter of the amount? Maybe a tenth of the amount. Hence, there is a reason for strong cynicism by many that the Wausau Affordable Housing Regional Task Force won't be successful in relieving the housing security stress that many working people feel here in Wausau. In 1 year from now, what needs to happen to determine that this task force is not become known as a task farce? I think, number one, there's some immediate significant action that can be taken. Rent and mortgage relief, cancellation of debt and late fees. If people could afford to pay their rent, they'd be doing it. Renovate vacant and occupied substandard units, including measures to improve energy efficiency. Recent research supports this. There's a lot of research that already speaks to what can be done. $26.32 million will be given to Marathon County through the American Rescue Plan. Supports this. I would also ask you to consider bringing in a county supervisor on the board, on the task force, to increase the pool of resources, optimize coordination, minimize duplication of services among the appropriate agencies that are committed to ending homelessness by 2025. And I think the City Council must monitor closely, establish meaningful and measurable goals for the task force, such as how many people have benefited from the task force, and reevaluate its work in 6 months. I agree. I don't think 90 days is enough. I support the mission and the purpose of this task force. Its inclusion of people directly impacted, the bringing together of groups invested in the goal of ending homelessness, and its intent to engage the public all the way along the way. I'm encouraged that it was created in response to citizens' concerns and that it will address supportive services, understanding that affordable housing means a lot more than just putting a roof over somebody's head. We have before us, I believe, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to end homelessness by providing affordable housing security for all as the foundation for long-term economic security and overall well-being for the working people of Wausau. And its success will go a long way in restoring confidence that the city government does serve the interests of all Wausauians. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grau. Anything further? Alder Gillian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess from what I'm hearing, there seems to be, I suppose it's kind of like an emergency room in the way patients are triaged or what have you, that perhaps one would not treat one condition with the same degree of urgency it would treat another, a heart attack versus a hangnail, if you will. So it feels like what I'm hearing from different sides of the discussion here is that on one hand, we have some data gathering and assessment that's going to probably take a year, and to rush it may be to undercut it in terms of the quality of assessment. But then what I'm hearing, which also seems to be quite well founded, is that we have an acute, urgent situation that may need some action in the immediate future. For example, I mean, I had received some statistics about some of the public housing, and they're nearly at full capacity. The average income looks in one building to be between 11 and 13,000 per year, and there's 40 people on the wait list. So, I mean, I think in this type of dire, pressing situation, we can't wait a year to do something about that. So I would suggest, I mean, perhaps the task force can work with the year-long time frame and do what it can with the time it needs. But I think in the immediate future, something must be done, and perhaps it can simply be done outside of the task force. And that seems like it would be a two-pronged approach where we hit the acute, immediate need while giving enough time to hit those long-term goals. That's one thought. Thank you.
Sure, well taken. Certainly, I don't think, it's not like we're looking at building a large monument, let's say, and its completion date is, 2.5 years down the road. What we're doing is, or not I mean, but the task force is going to be doing is looking at a myriad of things and prioritizing and looking at immediate opportunities and long-term opportunities, things that have to be long-term goals by their very nature, and others that we can work on. The federal money that Mr. Grau referred to that's coming in, we still haven't really gotten firm guidelines on usage yet. So when we get that, I mean, that's going to give us more to think about and talk about and prioritize with. That's how I would envision this task force working. It's not a monumental, thing. It's a lot of things, and they ought to be taken, as they come. Sure.
I want to point out that, no matter what the task force does, it's all going to be on the city council to implement whatever it is. So you all don't stop voting on things and suggesting things and, authoring resolutions while this task force does stuff. You're still doing your work. So if stuff needs to get done, let's get it done.
Darn right. Okay, anything else from the committee? Well, I would welcome a motion to, yes, sure, come on up. Please give us your name and address and have at it.
Kevin Porter, 151 Wisteria Lane, Wausau. Just a peanut gallery comment here. I've been a member of the Builders Association for the last several years in Wausau, proud supporter of all things. And And it seems as if there could be maybe a missing link or relationship with the Builders Association, with potential resources to help with people that want to contribute towards the success of Wausau in providing some solutions. And so, again, just sharing food for thought. I think the task force is a great idea. I think that I would just encourage the idea of well, how can we potentially leverage some of these resources that we have, that people that want to help, and that wouldn't necessarily charge a premium with subsidized money to do so. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, are we at a point where we might entertain a motion to give our blessing to the creation of this task force and let the mayor and other people start moving ahead? If so, I'd love to see a motion. I have a motion from Watson. Do I have a second? I have a second from McElhaney. We've had a lot of discussion, but I welcome any more before we vote. Seeing none? Okay, all in favor? Oh, Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Tom. I was just going to mention one of the things that maybe we as a council can do at the next council meeting is to advocate from the Biden administration on more Section 8 vouchers. That way, people that are on a fixed income could end up going into maybe some of this new housing with subsidies so that they can improve their housing. And it could be something that may happen in the next few months. But I would think we probably need 1,000 more vouchers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. Good discussion. Mayor, there was something in the news just in the last few weeks or the last couple months or so about some sort of possible redefining or re-tiering Wausau as a community in terms of its population and whatnot. Is there an update on that?
The MSA, I don't believe there's been a vote beyond that recommendation.
And
So-
the implications thereof if we are redefined?
Yeah, we could lose our status as an entitlement city, which we already, which means, we serve a certain population, lower income, we have certain things there. So we already kind of stretch what that means. We've been grandfathered in because obviously we're not 50,000. So we're concerned. Everyone says that we wouldn't lose that status. We could still be, whatever it is, but it might be a problem. So anyway, I'll keep an eye out. I haven't seen any voting. There's been mass opposition to it, but from everyone all over the place, so.
Sure. Okay, thank you. All right, I can move back now to item 3 on our agenda, discussion and possible action on a third amendment to the 2015 Blanker River East Brownstones Development Agreement, Phase 3 for Short Street properties. And Sean, well, those that hadn't heard that Sean, this will probably be his last meeting with this committee. And the end of this month to take another over in the Fox River Valley, right? Correct. So I just want to say, it's been a pleasure working with you. You've been a great guy to talk with and work with, and a great resource for everybody here. So hate to see you go, and congratulations on and good luck on your new opportunity